Welcome to Crimson Guitars and welcome to the 6th episode of the Sharpening Masterclass series. In this series I am taking every conceivable method of sharpening that I can conceive of and also as many different tools as I can possibly sharpen. And I'm going to show you how I do it, how other people do it, and if you have any suggestions, please put it in the comments below. Today I am looking at the Scary Sharp system. This is, I'm not sure why it's called Scary Sharp. Possibly it's scary how bloody expensive it is because you go through a lot of very expensive sandpaper. Maybe because whoever named it thought their tool was getting frighteningly sharp. Which it's possible to actually do with this method. Basically, as an overview, you are using something hard and flat and you are sticking sandpaper to it of various grades and using that to sharpen your tool. Okay, it's the exact same idea behind using waterstones or diamond stones or any of the above, really. You are abrading the surface of your plane with something abrasive. The difference is that one, you're going to be using either a metal plate or a glass plate, which stays flat. Instead of abrading it and you having to re-level your waterstones every single time, you just replace the sandpaper. And if you're sharpening enough to make your metal plate not level, not flat, you're doing a heck of a lot of sharpening. So it is good for that. It is also very good as a pre-waterstone or a pre-diamond stone or ceramic stone method. If you've got a tool that is pitted with rust, for example, I've got this lovely old Spears of a Scottish infill plane, and the bottom of this plane is really, really pitted, and I want to restore this plane and get it up and working because I desperately want to. Please forgive me for whispering in your ears there. But it is very, very pitted and rusty, and what I'm going to do on the bottom is use a surfacing plate with a coarse grit paper, and I'm going to surface the bottom. I also use this system for just flattening the bottoms of planes that aren't quite true, and you need it to be flat around the mouth and all that jazz. It's exact same system, just with a different thing in mind. So it is useful. However, I'm not a particular fan of it, mainly because it is so expensive. A sheet of 2,500 grit wet and dry paper might cost you 50p to £1, and if you are going to sharpen 5 or 10 chisels 4 or 5 times a day, if you're using them hard, you're going to go through as many pounds worth of wet and dry paper as you would if you went and bought yourself a Shapton stone. That would be, a 60 quid Shapton ceramic stone will last you forever. They stay flat and it's wonderful and it's the same grit. And that's 60 sheets of wet and dry paper there. So anyhow, so I'm going into this with the thought pattern that this isn't my favorite sharpening method. However, I'm going to give it a good go, and I have used it before, and I'm going to show you how I would use it. I've got a new plane blade here. This is a Takumi Okada laminated plane blade, which we need to oil that clamp in the background. Vise, oil that vise. This is a laminated steel plane blade, so the back is soft steel, the front is very hard steel, and it's straight out of the packet, and in need of sharpening. So I'm going to see how this goes. I am an inveterate tool junkie, and I bought this old surfacing plate. It's used as a reference for tool making, really, and when you want something perfectly flat. A lot of other people who use the system will buy a 10 mil thick or more piece of glass. Now, the way glass is made, it's floated on, crikey, molten tin or something, isn't it? Something like that. What that means is that you get something that's perfectly flat and wonderful. Now, this is a very expensive Hermes 800 grit sticky backed paper. And the other problem with the Scary Sharp system is literally that. How do you stick your paper down? Oh, this is 2,500. I must not forget that. What's that? 1,200. How do you stick your paper down? If you're using wet and dry stuff, it's actually rather difficult. It moves. If you wet the paper and wet your surfacing plate, it sort of sticks down, but doesn't stay put. It'll move, it'll slip, and that's when it tears. Now, I've got here 3M spray mount stuff, repositional adhesive. I'm sure 3M are taking over the world, by the way. Anyhow, this stuff does work rather well, and you see it's given me an invisible fine spray. And I can use that to, stuck my fingers, I can use that to hold that down perfectly flat, although I've gone over the edge because I put that in the wrong place. Anyhow, so that's one option. Another actually is Pritt stick. Now, Pritt stick does work. It tends to give you micro ridges, though, so it's to be avoided if at all possible. Yeah, the 3M spray mount is possible. In the US, there are available much more sticky-backed sandpapers than we have in the UK at the moment. Although axminster.co.uk do sell this blue stuff from, I think, 800 grit up. Right, so we sprayed some chemicals in the air, and let's just do that. Now, the reason I'm doing it this way, oh, come on. Let's just double check what grit that is. That's the 1200. It says it's repositional. There we go. The reason I'm doing it this way is so that when I'm flattening the edge of my blade, I'm off the side. And I can just turn my surfacing plate around and it's not a problem. If I had 4 strips next to each other, I wouldn't be able to flatten the middle of the blade or flatten the flat of the blade in the middle of the plate because it would just get in the way. I'm going to wait for this to cure, go get some water, and we'll see what's up with Scary Sharp. I prefer water in a squirty bottle like this so that I can just squirt it all over my bench because I'm a fool. Okay, this is raw. Start on the 400 grit, and it's the exact same technique as I would use on a waterstone. And it's just taking, as you can see, just the edge off. Now, the actual technique, yeah, the technique, well, that's the next thing we're going to be filming, isn't it? We're going to be talking about all of the different techniques that you can use to sharpen using your hands, really, or even various different machines, if there are several different techniques that one could use. Now, the bonus is that my plate is perfectly flat. The 400 grit is starting to make a dent, and, well, not make a dent, remove the dents, that's the point. Anyhow, I'm going to get on with this, Now doing it by hand, let's get a little bit more water on here. Spread the water around. I'm going to find my point. Now the thing about this blade actually is that it comes with a camber. I need a square or a straight edge here, so you can see, I think. So that's rocking. You're not going to be able to see that. It's got a camber on it, so it's acting sort of like a scrub plane blade. Although I do like a small camber on my blades. So I'm just locating my angle, and then I'm going to put pressure on each corner as I go, and you'll see that now. Each time I go forward, I'm putting pressure on a different corner, and I'm alternating that, and it's already pulling a burr over. So, as ever, with a new plane blade, or a plane blade that you are reviving, shall we say, the most work is on the back. I'm having to use up the entire width of this piece of paper because, as you can see, I'm shiny in the middle, but my edges haven't been touched yet. And the issue is, this 400 grit is done. It's finished, it's dead, it's just not cutting anymore. Now this is where the 3M stuff works. You saw how easy it was to take that off. The back of this is slightly curved, and this is just taking way too long. I'm going to show you a technique that is used by a chap called Paul Sellers, who is incredibly talented, and I really enjoy his videos, and I sort of watch them religiously actually. He's on YouTube, Paul Sellers. Now, I completely disagree with how he sharpens. I'm trying to glue this down, it's just not going to work. One of the things he does that I completely disagree with is he basically puts a micro bevel on the back of the blade by using a ruler to lift it up a little bit. And I'm going to have to tape that down, aren't I? Let's have a look and see. But what this does is it means that you're flattening much less on the back of the blade, a much less surface area. Now, technically, from the point of view of the plane, as the plane works, if you're taking 1 degree away or adding 1 degree to your 25-degree bevel, it's not really too much of an issue. I just think that it's something to be used in desperation rather than habit, really. And the desperation is, in this case, I'm trying to speed this up. Although, well, let's see. Well, there we go. You should be able to see that if I can, if you can. It's actually taking it quite nicely. Now, the problem is, this is very imprecise. If I am there, I've got one angle. If I'm there, it's another angle. And I don't know, it just seems a little bit imprecise to me. So while I'm a huge fan of his work and of his teaching style, and you know, if you ever want to learn how to sharpen saw blades, I'm pretty sure, well, yeah, check his stuff out. Anyhow, I'm doing this, and you can also see that I'm losing rather large chunks of my paper. So this is just wearing it all away, and basically this piece of paper is only going to last for this one blade, which is the crux of the problem with the Scary Sharp system. I'm going to move that over a little bit to a fresh bit of paper. Now, the question is, why am I not going to 180 grit paper or coarser? I don't have 320 in wet and dry. There we go. We seem to have done it now. This is so difficult to see. Why am I not going to 180? It's simple. These wet and dry papers are particularly fine and fairly even. 180 grit, 240, etc. for doing with wood, it's less finely policed, and you get bigger, with bigger grits you get imprecision and uncertainty, and we definitely don't want that when we're sharpening. We want this perfectly flat. We don't want to add any issues in there. So yeah, with fresh 240 grit, it will have high spots, and we don't want those. Okay, so now I've got a burr all the way along the edge. I'm going to take that off. Every time you turn a burr over, your tool gets slightly sharper. Oh, now there we go. If you saw that happen, I lost control slightly and went into my paper and destroyed it. Now, I've been sharpening on stones using this hand method forever, and if a pretty girl walks past, I will get distracted and drop something and gouge into my stone. Or if a fleeting thought of, I don't know, the next tool I'm going to design. With a stone, it's not really an issue. Yeah, you can flatten it out. With a piece of paper, you have to replace the paper. There's just, I could use maybe on the back a little bit, but this happens, and it happens very easily, especially if you don't have very even glue underneath. And even this 3M stuff, even this, you saw how easily that went on and how fine the spray was. I can feel that spray on the back of this sandpaper. Anyhow, I'm going to go on to my 800 grit now. That actually couldn't have happened at a better time. I don't need to replace the paper because we're kind of done on there. Now this is the problem. I don't want to use my ruler, but I don't have a choice. So rub the back and watch the other videos. I will repeat ad infinitum that you have to, you see, I can feel little ripples and bumps and things in the glue underneath this. Anyway, I will ad infinitum, adverts, infinity, say that the definition of a sharp tool is two highly polished surfaces meeting at a point, or without a radius, as Ron Hock says, actually. And in fact, speaking of that, you really do need to buy the Ron Hock book if you're interested in sharpening and want to geek out entirely. The man is very, very intelligent and a very nice guy, actually, as well. Okay, we're on to the 2,500 grit now. As you can see, I've ripped the hell out of this within seconds, and that was just trying to flatten the back because there was some microscopic speck of something in there. It's ripped out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in 6 or 7 places. It's taken the top layer of paper off. Well, you judge. 2,500 grit. Because I did one part of this with the ruler, I have to do the rest, otherwise the angles change and it's just weird. But this should, at this point now, start giving me a properly sharp plane blade. which I'm excited about because, hey, sharp is exciting. Yeah, I'm not feeling a burr here, but I'm also not feeling confident in how sharp this is. Yeah, it's it's got a catch. There's nothing for it. My problem is now, and you won't be able to see this. You might actually. I've got, because of this angle, I've got a bit of light on the edge, and I'm not getting that edge correct. It's just not. It's a micro thing, but the flexibility, not having a fixed radius or a fixed angle because of where the ruler is really screwing with me here. So, I mean, that's an issue with using this ruler and this micro bevel, micro angle, whatever. It's not necessarily indicative of the Scary Sharp system itself. Grr. I seem to go back to, or at least finish up, every single one of these videos using my strop. And I am distinctly underwhelmed. Without a strop, I'm currently, some piece of paper. It's cutting, but the edge, it's catching, it's leaving bits of paper. Now, the reason for that is actually the fact that I was using Paul Seller's trick, and I don't know, maybe I don't have the knack of that particular trick. I don't think it's, you know, that difficult, but that extra angle, which I'm now trying to get with my hands as I strop, has just added an inconsistency into my sharpening. And it's basically doubled how long it's taken me to get this plain blade anywhere near sharp. So I am seriously not a fan of that in the slightest. I think it's a trick that seemed to, it did the job. It's flattened just the edge instead of trying to flatten a large surface, so that's fine. But it's left me unable to sharpen the way I normally would. Okay. With the use of the strop, it's starting to get sharp enough. All right. Now, the Scary Sharp system in itself is the cheapest and fastest way to start sharpening. Find yourself a piece of glass, even if you have to go and buy a piece of 10mm thick or half-inch thick glass. You're probably talking 10 or 15 pounds, maybe $20, okay? And that's not that expensive. And a couple of pieces of wet and dry sandpaper, and it will allow you to get something that is sharp, although, you know, without a strop, not as sharp as I would like. But once you start trying to do more than a few chisels or plain blades, or yeah, let's stop cutting up this invoice. My mother actually wants that in the office. Ha. Yeah, once you start getting to more than a few tools, or you're getting serious, in the medium to long term, this system just costs you so much more in money, And what I hadn't realized, it costs you as much in time. Now, I've got this plain blade, that's mirror shiny, but it's not as sharp as my other mirror shiny tools because of that angle. But the process of using all this paper, let's have a look at that. Look at that. It's just terrible. Yeah, that's 20, 30 pence worth of material there. That's basically just going in the bin now for 30 seconds of use. I didn't even get 30 seconds of use out of that one piece of paper. And it took twice as long as if I'd been using a water stone or a ceramic stone or the initially slightly more expensive tools of this sharpening trade, as it were. Now, if you are a hobby woodworker, getting into the hobby, and you aren't sure if you're going to stick with it, you're not sure if you want to sharpen by hand, Scary Sharp is great. Okay, it is an entry-level, cheap, easy-to-do thing. If you want to be a woodworker or are a woodworker or are a guitar builder and sharp tools are going to figure in your life, you have to invest in, at the very least, a set of cheapish Waterstones. You know, an 800 grit Waterstone, £30. In fact, you could get for about 40 pounds, you could get the double-sided ones, which 800 grit and 1200 grit, and all you need is a Kingstone, or even a homemade strop instead of a Kingstone would get you the same results I've got from this today. So it has its place. It definitely has its place, but there are way more cons than pros, in my opinion. I have a blade that I'm less excited about using this blade now because I've got that micro angle thing on there. I'm seriously considering putting this on the Robert Sorby and regrinding that angle, actually, which is kind of depressing, really, considering I just spent an hour sharpening this, and it should have taken me half an hour. So let that be a lesson to you. The Scary Sharp system is not as fun as it should be. Now, there are people that sell, or there are companies that make a Scary Sharp system based machine where you put bits of sandpaper on a rotary tool and that goes around and around and around. I've never used one of them. I assume it is as wasteful. What am I saying? It's like buying an Epiphone rather than a Gibson. The Epiphone is going to have trouble. It's cheaper to start with, but in the long run, you wish you just bought the Les Paul. Yeah? Oh my goodness. I nearly went off into cheap Escort rather than expensive Escort and all of that. And that's not what this channel's about, is it? I'm a happily married man with children. Shush. You buy cheap, you get cheap. This system is initially cheap, but in the long run, 10 times more expensive than it should be. I've said that 5 or 6 different ways. The message has sunk in, I hope. So thank you very much for watching. If this has been at all useful to you, click like, click subscribe. Go and experiment and tell me what you think. If you are a proponent of the Scary Sharp system, argue with me in the comments below, because that's always fun. If you've got a better way, if you think I've done this wrong somehow, let me know. But for now, well, live in hope and anticipation, because the next video in the Sharpening Masterclass series will be out next week, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to do it on. So there. We shall be back. Have an awesome day. Go sharpen something. Goodbye.